We are raised on a comforting idea, an idea that says, if we work hard, someone will notice. If we struggle long enough, someone will step in. If we wait patiently, help will arrive. This idea feels good. It gives us hope, but it also quietly trains us to wait. We wait for the right opportunity. We wait for encouragement. We wait for someone to believe in us before we believe in ourselves. And slowly, without realizing it, waiting becomes a lifestyle. Here's the truth most people avoid saying out loud. The world is not designed to rescue you. Not because it's cruel, not because people don't care, but because everyone is carrying their own weight, their own fear, their own unfinished dreams. When things fall apart in your life, there is no alarm that goes off for the world, no spotlight turns on, no committee gathers to decide how to help you move forward. Life doesn't pause and ask if you're ready, yet many people live as if it will. They stay stuck in jobs they hate, waiting to be recognized. They stay silent about their ideas, waiting to be invited. They delay change, waiting for confidence to magically appear. And every day they wait, the gap grows wider between where they are and where they want to be. The myth of rescue is dangerous because it sounds reasonable, it sounds polite, it sounds patient, but underneath it is fear. Fear of getting it wrong, fear of being judged, fear of failing without an excuse. Waiting for help gives us a story to tell ourselves. If someone had helped me, I would have succeeded. If the timing was right, I would have started. If they believed in me, I would have tried. But growth doesn't begin with belief from others. It begins with action taken without it. Most breakthroughs don't happen because someone opened a door. They happen because someone knocked until their knuckles bled, or built their own door when no one answered. Look closely at people who create change. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't wait to be chosen. They started before anyone was watching, not because they were fearless, but because they were tired of waiting. There is a moment every person faces, quiet, uncomfortable, and deeply personal, the moment you realize no one is coming. At first it hurts, it feels lonely, it feels unfair. But then, if you let it, it becomes liberating. Because when no one is coming, you are no longer performing for approval. You are no longer negotiating with expectations. You are free to act based on what you believe matters. Waiting keeps responsibility outside of you. Acceptance pulls it back in. And responsibility is not blame. It's ownership. Ownership says, this is mine to solve. Ownership says, I may not control the circumstances, but I control my response. Ownership says, I will move even if I move alone. The people who change their lives are not the ones with the most help. They are the ones who stop expecting it. They understand something simple but powerful. No one owes them belief. No one owes them support. No one owes them a chance. And because they accept that, they stop wasting energy being disappointed. Disappointment is born from expectation. Expectation that others should show up the way we want them to. But leadership, real leadership, starts with self-leadership. And self-leadership begins the moment you stop waiting for validation. This doesn't mean you reject people. It means you don't depend on them to begin. You start small. You start imperfect. You start scared. But you start because progress does not require applause. It requires commitment. The hardest part is not the work. The hardest part is letting go of the fantasy that someone else will make it easier. There is dignity in doing it yourself. There is strength in standing up without being lifted. There is clarity that only comes when excuses are gone. When you accept that no one is coming, your standards rise, your discipline sharpens, your focus becomes intentional. You stop asking, will this be noticed? And start asking, does this matter? And that question changes everything. Because when the motivation is internal, momentum becomes sustainable. You don't quit when no one claps. You don't stop when no one encourages you. You keep going because quitting no longer feels honest. The myth of rescue keeps people comfortable but small. Acceptance makes people uncomfortable but capable. So if you feel alone right now, that doesn't mean you're abandoned. It may mean you're being invited to step into responsibility. If no one is helping you, it doesn't mean you're unworthy. It means this part of the journey is yours. And one day, when you look back, you won't be proud that someone saved you. You'll be proud that you didn't need saving, because the moment you stopped waiting was the moment you truly began. There is a moment that changes everything. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't come with applause or recognition. It's the moment you realize that responsibility is not something to avoid, it's something to claim. Most people spend their lives trying to escape responsibility. They see it as pressure, as weight, as something that limits freedom. But the opposite is true. The more responsibility you avoid, the smaller your life becomes. The more responsibility you accept, the more control you gain. We are often taught that power comes from position, permission, or authority, that someone has to give us responsibility before we can act. But real power doesn't work that way. Real power appears the instant you decide, this is on me. Not because you have all the answers, not because you're ready, but because waiting has stopped working. Responsibility shifts the focus from what's missing to what's possible. It takes your attention off who didn't help you and puts it on what you can do next. And that shift is everything. When you don't take responsibility, you give your power away. You give it to circumstances. You give it to other people's decisions. You give it to timing, luck, and excuses. But when you take responsibility, even in unfair situations, you take your power back. Power doesn't mean control over others. It means control over your choices. You may not have chosen the struggle you're in. You may not have chosen the obstacles in your way, but you always choose how you respond to them. That choice is leadership. Responsibility forces honesty. It removes the comfort of blame. It removes the illusion that someone else will fix things for you. And honesty is uncomfortable. It asks hard questions. What role did I play? What am I avoiding? What needs to change, starting with me? These questions, Don, attack you. They develop you because blame keeps you stuck in the past. Responsibility pulls you into the future. The moment you say, this is my responsibility, you stop being a victim of circumstances and start becoming an author of outcomes. This doesn't mean you carry everything alone. It means you don't wait to be carried. There is a difference. Responsible people ask for help, but they don't wait for permission to act. They seek advice, but they make decisions. They accept feedback, but they own the result. Responsibility creates momentum. When you take ownership, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop making deals like, I'll try when I feel confident, or I'll start when it's less risky. Confidence doesn't come first. Ownership does. Confidence is a byproduct of doing what you said you would do over and over again. And responsibility makes that possible. When something fails, responsible people don't collapse, they adjust. They don't ask who's to blame, they ask what's the lesson. That mindset builds resilience. Resilience isn't about being tough, it's about being adaptable. And adaptability is only possible when you stop protecting your ego and start protecting your mission. Responsibility also creates trust. Not just from others, but from yourself. Every time you take responsibility and follow through, you send yourself a message, I can be relied on. That message compounds. It changes how you see yourself. It changes how you make decisions. It changes what you believe is possible. People who avoid responsibility live reactively. They respond to life. They explain their circumstances. People who accept responsibility live intentionally. They shape their lives. They design their actions. The difference isn't talent, it's ownership. Responsibility removes the luxury of excuses. And without excuses, progress accelerates. You stop explaining why something didn't happen. You start ensuring it does. And yes, responsibility is heavy, but so is regret. The weight of responsibility strengthens you. The weight of regret weakens you. One builds capability, the other builds resentment. Responsibility doesn't promise comfort. It promises growth, and growth is the goal. Because when you take responsibility, you stop waiting for life to change. You become the change. You stop hoping for better conditions. You create better habits. You stop wishing for opportunity. You be. Yield skills that attract it. Responsibility gives meaning to effort. It turns work into purpose. You're no longer just busy. You're intentional. And over time, something remarkable happens. People begin to trust you, not because you talk well, not because you promise big things, but because you consistently take ownership. Leaders are not chosen because they want responsibility. They are followed because they already carry it. And it always starts the same way, quietly, individually, with a decision no one else sees. This is on me. That decision may feel heavy at first, but it is also the moment you stop feeling powerless. Because responsibility doesn't limit you. It frees you. It gives you direction. It gives you agency. It gives you a reason to act now And once you experience that kind of power, you never wait for someone else to take responsibility for your life again. There is a reason doing it yourself changes you. Not just your results, but your thinking. When you remove the safety net of help, something important happens. You are forced to pay attention. You are forced to decide. You are forced to confront what you actually believe. Clarity does not come from comfort. It comes from commitment. When others step in too quickly, they protect us from uncertainty. When no one steps in, we have to face it. And uncertainty has a way of asking honest questions. What do I really want? What am I willing to sacrifice? What actually matters when excuses are gone? Self-reliance is not about rejecting support. It's about discovering direction. When you do things yourself, you stop borrowing purpose from others. You stop chasing goals because they look impossible. You stop following paths simply because they're familiar. You begin to understand your why. Not the version you say out loud, the version that shows up in your actions. Clarity is revealed in moments of pressure, when time is limited, when resources are scarce, when no one is watching. That's when priorities surface. When you're on your own, distractions lose their power. You can't hide behind noise. You can't blame confusion. You have to choose. And choice creates alignment. Most people think clarity comes first and action follows, but clarity is earned through movement. You don't think your way into purpose, you work your way into it, trying, failing, adjusting, trying again. That's the process. And doing it yourself accelerates that process because feedback is immediate. When something works, you know why. When it fails, you feel it. There is no buffer, no filter, no one else to soften the lesson. And that's exactly why it's powerful. Self-reliance strips away illusion. It shows you the gap between intention and behavior. You may believe you value discipline until no one is checking. You may believe you value learning until it becomes uncomfortable. You may believe you value growth until it costs you consistency. Being on your own exposes the truth, and truth brings clarity. You begin to see what drains you and what energizes you, what you tolerate and what you won't, what aligns with you and what never did. This clarity doesn't arrive all at once. It builds quietly, one decision at a time, one boundary at a time, one uncomfortable action at a time. And slowly, confidence changes shape. It's no longer loud or performative. It becomes calm. Because calm confidence comes from knowing you can figure things out. Not because you have certainty, but because you have capability. Self-reliance teaches you how you learn best, how you recover, how you adapt. It replaces dependency with trust. Not trust in outcomes, but trust in yourself. That kind of trust is rare, and it's earned. When you rely on yourself, motivation becomes internal. You don't need external pressure to move. You move because stopping feels dishonest. Your standards rise, not because someone demands it, but because you do. Clarity also brings restraint. You stop saying yes to things that don't serve your direction. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't understand your path. You stop confusing movement with progress because you know where you're going, even if the destination is still forming. Self-reliance doesn't mean you have all the answers. It means you're willing to search for them. And searching requires humility. You learn to admit when you're wrong. You learn to course correct without shame. You learn to listen to reality, not ego. Clarity is not certainty. It's alignment between values and actions. And that alignment only becomes visible when you're responsible for every step. When no one else is driving, you feel every turn. When no one else is steering, you learn to read the road. That awareness changes how you lead. Because once you've had to figure it out alone, you don't rely on slogans. You don't depend on shortcuts. You don't pretend clarity is instant. You respect the process, and you stop rushing others through it. Self-reliance also builds respect for yourself and for others. You respect effort because you know its cost. You respect consistency because you've tested it. You respect growth because, you've lived it. This is why people who've done it themselves speak differently. They don't oversell, they don't overpromise, they speak with grounded conviction. Not because they know everything, but because they know what matters. And that is clarity. Clarity doesn't make life easier. It makes decisions simpler. You waste less time debating. You waste less energy proving. You move with intention, and intention compounds. What began as necessity becomes strength. What began as isolation becomes identity. What began as uncertainty becomes purpose. Doing it yourself is not the goal. Becoming clear is, and once you have that clarity, help becomes optional, not essential. You no longer wait for direction. You become it. Because when you've learned to rely on yourself, you don't just move forward, you move forward on purpose. Discomfort is often misunderstood. We treat it like a warning sign, a signal to stop, a sign that something has gone wrong. But discomfort is not the enemy. Comfort is. Comfort keeps things familiar. It keeps things predictable, and it quietly keeps things the same. Growth, on the other hand, has never been comfortable. Every meaningful change begins with tension. The tension between who you are and who you could be. The tension between what feels safe and what feels necessary. Discomfort is the signal that you've reached that edge. Most people step back when they feel it. They interpret discomfort as failure, as proof they're not ready, as evidence they should. Wait. But waiting doesn't remove discomfort. It just delays learning. When no one is there to guide you, reassure you, or soften the experience, discomfort becomes unavoidable. ND, that's when it starts to teach. Discomfort strips away autopilot. You can't drift through difficult moments. You have to be present. Presence sharpens awareness. You notice where you hesitate. You notice what scares you. You notice the habits you rely on when pressure increases. And in that awareness, patterns appear. Discomfort reveals where your limits actually are, not where you imagine them to be. It shows you how much capacity you've been underusing. Most limits are not physical. They are stories we've repeated long enough to believe. Discomfort challenges those stories. It asks questions you can't ignore. Why do I avoid this? What am I protecting? What would happen if I stayed instead of escaped? There is a difference between pain that harms and discomfort that grows. Harm breaks you down without purpose. Discomfort builds you up with intention. But only if you stay. Staying is the hard part. When there is no one to step in, no one to reassure you, no one to take over, you're left with a choice. You can retreat into familiarity, or you can lean into learning. Learning requires humility. Discomfort exposes what you don't know, what you haven't practiced, what you've been avoiding. And that exposure feels personal. But it's not judgment. It's feedback. Every uncomfortable moment carries information. It tells you where to focus, what to strengthen, what to rethink. People who grow quickly are not more talented. They are more willing to sit in discomfort long enough to understand it. They don't rush to escape the feeling. They ask what it's trying to teach. Discomfort also builds resilience. Resilience is not toughness, it's familiarity. The more often you face discomfort, the less intimidating it becomes. Not because it disappears, but because you recognize it. You've been here before. You survived. You adapted. That memory becomes confidence. Confidence built from comfort is fragile. Confidence built from discomfort is durable. When things go wrong, people with durable confidence don't panic. They pause, they assess, they adjust. Because discomfort no longer feels like danger. It feels like a signal to engage. Discomfort also clarifies values. When things are easy, values are theoretical. When things are hard, values become practical. It's easy to say you value integrity until it costs you. It's easy to say you value discipline until it demands consistency. It's easy to say you value growth until it disrupts your routine. Discomfort forces you to choose, and choice reveals what matters most. When you're on your own, those choices are unavoidable. There is no one else to defer to, no one else to blame. And in those moments, you discover your true priorities, not the ones you claim, but the ones you live. Discomfort also sharpens decision-making. You stop overthinking when action is required. You stop waiting for perfect information. You learn to move with what you have. That skill compounds. The more often you act under uncertainty, the better you get at it. You develop judgment. You develop intuition. Not because you're guessing, but because you're learning from real experience. Discomfort teaches patience. Not passive patience, but active endurance. The kind that keeps showing up even when results are slow. The kind that trusts the process without demanding immediate reward. When no one is hearing, patience becomes internal. You learn to measure progress differently. By effort, by consistency, by alignment. Discomfort also humbles ego. It reminds you that mastery takes time. that growth is earned, not declared, that progress is uneven, and humility keeps you learning. People who avoid discomfort stop improving. People who accept it stay curious. Curiosity changes the experience. Instead of asking, how do I get out of this? You ask, what can I learn here? That question turns struggle into strategy. Discomfort doesn't last forever, but its lessons do. Every time you move through discomfort without escaping it, you expand your capacity. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What once felt impossible becomes familiar. And eventually, discomfort stops feeling like punishment. It feels like progress. This is why the absence of help matters. When no one cushions the experience, the lesson is clear. When no one rescues you, growth sticks. You don't just know what to do next time, you know you can do it. And that belief changes how you face the future. You stop fearing challenge, you start expecting it. Not because you enjoy discomfort, but because you trust what it produces. Discomfort is not a detour from the path, it is the path. And the people who learn from it don't just move forward, they grow into the kind of person who can handle what's next. There is a quiet transformation that happens when you carry your own weight long enough. It doesn't announce itself, it doesn't demand recognition, but it changes how you see other people. When you've struggled without rescue, you develop a different kind of strength, not the loud kind, the useful kind. You know what it feels like to need help and not receive it. You know what it costs to keep going anyway. And that experience leaves a mark. It reshapes your empathy. You stop assuming laziness. You stop rushing judgment. You stop offering advice before understanding effort. Because you remember the silence. You remember the doubt. You remember the days when progress was invisible, and that memory becomes the foundation of how you lead others. Becoming the help you once needed doesn't mean becoming a savior. It means becoming reliable. There is a difference. Saviors create dependency. Reliable people create capability. When you've learned to rely on yourself, you don't rush in to fix everything for others. You don't remove the struggle. You support the process because you know that growth can't be outsourced. The strongest leaders are not the ones who do everything. They are the ones who create environments where others can do the work themselves. That mindset only comes from experience, from knowing that confidence is built, not given, that clarity is earned, not explained, that resilience is practiced, not taught. When you've walked that path alone, you don't offer shortcuts that weaken people. You offer guidance that strengthens them. You listen more than you speak. You ask better questions. You give people space to figure things out. Because you trust the process, you also become more patient. You don't expect instant results. You don't confuse effort with outcome. You understand how long real change takes. Patience is not passive. It's informed. It comes from remembering how long it took you, how many times you failed, how many adjustments you made. That patience creates psychological safety. People feel it. They sense that they are not being judged for where they are. They sense that progress matters more than perfection. And that feeling unlocks potential. When you become the help you once needed, you don't lead with authority. You lead with example. You show what consistency looks like. You show what ownership sounds like. You show what humility feels like. Not by telling story about your struggle, but by how you behave when things are hard. Your calm under pressure becomes permission for others to stay calm. Your honesty about mistakes becomes permission for others to learn. Your discipline becomes a standard others can follow. And that influence is powerful because people don't follow instructions. They follow behavior. Being self-made also changes how you offer help. You don't rescue people from consequences. You help them understand them. You don't shield people from discomfort. You help them navigate it. You don't take responsibility away. You share it. That approach builds trust, not the kind that makes people comfortable, but the kind that makes them capable. When you've done it yourself, you know when to step in and when to step back. You know when encouragement is needed and when silence is more respectful. You also know that helping doesn't always feel good in the moment. Sometimes it means letting people struggle longer than you'd like. Sometimes it means saying no. Sometimes it means not being liked. But real help is not about approval. It's about outcomes. And outcomes improve when people are trusted to grow. Becoming the help you once needed also changes how you see success. You stop measuring it by applause. You stop measuring it by visibility. You measure it by impact, by how many people can stand on their own, by how many people no longer need constant direction, by how many people trust themselves more because of your influence. That kind of success is quiet and it lasts. You also develop gratitude, not entitlement. You appreciate support when it comes, but you don't expect it. You don't confuse kindness with obligation. That gratitude makes you generous, not with resources, but with belief. Belief is often the most valuable help. Belief that someone can figure it out. Belief that they're capable of more than they think. Belief that struggle does not disqualify them. When you give that kind of belief, you change trajectories, because belief doesn't remove obstacles. It gives people the courage to face them. The people who have done it themselves understand this deeply. They don't glamorize struggle. They respect it. They don't romanticize independence. They understand interdependence. They know that strong communities are built by strong individuals who have learned responsibility before they were given authority. This is the full circle. You start alone. You struggle quietly. You build yourself. And then, without trying to, you become a reference point for others. Not because you claim it, but because you've lived it. When people see someone who doesn't panic, who doesn't blame, who doesn't wait to be told what to do, they pay attention. They feel safer. They feel steadier. They feel more capable. And that is leadership. Not loud, not performative, but grounded. So when no one helps you, don't become bitter. Become better, carry the weight, learn the lessons, build the strength, because one day the world won't need you to save anyone. It will need you to stand beside them and remind them of something important. They can do it too. In the end, this message is not about isolation or pride. It is about truth. The truth that waiting for help keeps you small. The truth that responsibility gives you power. The truth that clarity is earned through action, not thought. The truth that discomfort is not a signal to stop, but a signal to grow. And the truth that self-made strength is never just for you. When you accept that no one is coming to rescue you, you stop negotiating with your potential. You stop delaying your life for permission that will never arrive. You stop asking the world to change before you do. And that is where everything shifts. Taking responsibility doesn't make life easier. It makes it honest. It removes excuses and replaces them with choices. And once you see your life as a series of choices, you realize how much power you've had all along. Clarity follows